Okay, and welcome back to final edition of Trailgating here, broadcasting from the heart of Chamonix, France. My name is Dylan Bowman, joined again by the great Corinne Malcolm. I haven't seen you in a couple days. What's up?
What's up? I know normally it's because I'm like locked in a small room in the Majestic, and this year I've just been like running around.
Yeah. So this year was wild. We've got a good docket of stuff to wrap out about to just summarize the amazing 2024 edition of UTMB. Big thank you to HOKA for making our coverage possible all week. Big thank you to the boys behind the camera, Ryan Thrower, Tony DePasquale. You guys are amazing. One final reminder to please subscribe to the channel here. It would really make us happy after 7 straight days of very little sleep, very little exercise too, unfortunately. So please subscribe to the channel. It might even boost your boys' fitness by osmosis. Jumping into it, Corinne, I think we have to start in the obvious place. I talked about this with Topher Gaylord and Kim Gaylord last night, but let's start with the champions. I'd love to just hear your perspective. We haven't caught up like in the last 3-4 days. So tell me your assessment. Give me your reactions from, the champions. 2 very different stories between Vincent Bouillard, Vinny B, as I'm now calling him, and Katie Scheid.
Vinny B. Yeah. I mean, you guys put him on the map in a way with that gorge victory 2 years ago. But yeah, I mean, both interesting champions. I think Katie's story is much more, we need to make her like, we need to convince her that she's a superstar, because she's not, this like gregarious, outgoing person. And it's like, she is a superstar. 100%. She is the future of the sport. She is one of the greats. She became the 10th American women's win, and is now one of the American women who has doubled here with 2 wins. I was 10th
American women's win in 21 years. And I think that's only 20 runnings because of the 2020 cancellation.
Yeah.
So the American women have 50% of the victories. Wow.
Yeah, more or less. And it comes, I think, only from 5 women. I'm probably wrong on that, but it's like Chrissy doubled, Nikki Kimball won once, Courtney's won 3 times, Katie's won twice,
Rory's won twice.
Yeah, incredibly impressive.
Yeah, very
so
cool.
I think earlier in the week I was even like, man, am I doubting Katie Scheid? Am I like going into this week doubting her? And from the gun, essentially, she came into Lake Contamines with the top 10 men and really never let up. She really held that same position within the men's field for the rest of the race.
Yep.
And I am completely blown away. And she is still the same Katie Scheid that we know and love. She had, someone brought over a 12-pack of Annie's mac and cheese for her from the U.S. because it's a favorite. That's probably a secret that's allowed to be on the internet.
Yeah.
And she's like, yeah, I was really excited. I had some for lunch before the race.
The style with which she races is so rad. I mean, because she was like 12th or 13th at Notre Dame de la Gorge, 13th at the finish line, and racing with complete fearlessness, but never knowing Katie and with her personality, quiet. I think she would describe herself as an introvert, shies away from, I think a lot of the public spotlight, though does conduct herself as a true professional of the sport. I just love the way that she goes about her business. It's hard to articulate, but the way she does it is captivating.
Her race alter ego is powerful. I would say that she probably comes off very quiet in day-to-day life to the outside world. And I feel like when she races, it's not that she's like being big or loud. It's just that she's there to throw down, independent of all that. And I think that she did it once again. I mean, she new course record by 21 minutes. Has a single Courtney Dauwalter record ever been taken down?
That was the first one. I mean, there was one. It was like the Javelina 100K from ages ago.
Yes.
None of her iconic course records have been touched until now. And she took 21 minutes, which is a margin.
Yeah, and Courtney was out there cheering her on. Right. It was so cool.
Yeah, and when Jim took Killian's record, it was by 9-minute margin, right? Like still fairly significant, but 21 minutes is pretty huge. And I remember back in 2013 watching Rory Bozio run 22:37, I think it was that year, and all of us being like, wow, that's never going to be broken. She broke Lizzie Hawker's course record that year by 2.5 hours. Courtney, though, on a slightly slower, slightly different course, took Rory's course record. And now on the same course, Katie takes Courtney's course record by 20 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a cool time to be a woman in this sport right now where you've got greats like Courtney and Katie really elevating the sport. And I was talking to some of the women as they came out of the podium ceremony just, 20 minutes ago. And we were all kind of reminiscing, or not reminiscing, really excited about this idea that we're kind of like in the wake a little bit. And it's awesome. Like we had all 10 women finish in the daylight, running way faster than last year. The whole field together running faster than last year. There were probably people within the top 10 to 20 who ran great times that any other year would have been top 10 and they weren't this weekend. And so I think it's one of those things too, where it's not the like women tearing each other down either. Like there really feels like an energy out there, on the trail in training and racing where it's like iron sharpens iron and the women are here to put that on display.
Yeah. Danny was in here the other night and she said that when she finished third place in OCC, that time would no longer finish in the top 10 this year.
Yeah, it's year over year.
It feels like an exponential
growth.
Improvement curve that we're experiencing right now. And in addition to Katie Scheid, before we talk about some of the things that you just mentioned, obviously we got to give some love to Vinny B.
100%.
Men's champion. One of the stories of the entire year. He was in here today for a post-race interview.
Awesome.
Katie, unfortunately, couldn't make it. She was too busy today, but I think we're going to do one remotely as soon as we both have an opportunity to decompress from race week. But Vincent Bouillard sat here on the couch. It was so fun, engaging to just chat with this humble materials engineer from HOKA.
So they just had like a team camp a couple weeks ago here. I was talking to Nico about this before I walked over and he was like, and Vincent was there. And yeah, he went on runs with them, but Vincent was there because he was there to tune material. He was there to make sure the shoes were fitting right and working right. He was making sure that the pack was doing what the pack needed to do. He wasn't there as an athlete at training camp. Sure, he was doing the runs, but he was there to make sure that the elite athletes on the HOKA professional trail running team, that their gear was meeting their needs. Yeah. And I just think it's so cool.
Yeah.
I ran into HOKA employees this week who were like, we didn't sleep at all because we were just so excited about Vincent.
What happens next for him? It's such an interesting conundrum, right? Because like
his life could change or he could be very content doing what he's doing.
Which I think it'll probably be somewhere in between those two things.
Agreed.
Right? Like HOKA, I'm sure, will recognize an opportunity to allow him to pursue sport in a way that might require him to step back slightly from his job. But he's been there for 8 years. He's 31. He started there when he was 23 years old.
As an intern.
So obviously he's contributed a lot to their products. They probably want to keep him on the team knowing that he's a valuable employee, but he just won UTMB. It's the most crazy conundrum that I'm sure they'll find some middle ground to accommodate both his ridiculous athletic talent and his clear professional success.
Yeah, I imagine an actual running contracts coming out of this or some sort of incentive structure maybe, or maybe not incentive structure, but some sort of like little kind of like, hey, like we do want to support you in this as well. People are probably wondering like, man, did he not make any money off this win? But technically with the new prize money, he did make 20,000 euro.
A big deal.
Which is a big deal. Yeah. It's a great day. They can go on vacation. But additionally to that too, talking about those deltas, right? He'll have gone from a $0 contract to potentially a contract. So he will ultimately make money off this win if he decides to do so.
I'm trying to just come up with a parallel story from a different sport. It's like very much a Rudy story. You know, just sort of like the ultimate underdog, 69th ranked runner in the field, but who has a special, unique gift inside of him that revealed itself at the perfect moment. And I don't know, I think just one of the stories of the week, obviously, but one of the stories of the year.
And it's not like, there was attrition, which we're going to talk about, but it's not like he won in 21 hours. Like he won in 1954.
Exactly.
And I think that is a very important distinction because you could look at this podium and be like, who are these dudes? Because they're not big names in the sport, or they're not the biggest names in the sport.
Aside from Hannes and Ludo, very few people on fantasy.freetrail.com would have selected any
Joaquin
of the other
Lopez. Yeah, exactly. And so I just think that but they weren't, they were not slouchy podium times.
Yeah.
Like they were really good. They were really good runs. And I just think that is, despite them not being well-known names, including the champion, Vinny B, as you now call him, it was legit. It was a legit showdown. It was a legit performance.
Yeah. All right, so let's touch on the attrition. We read all the names on last night's show, so I'm not going to do that again.
Like a moratorium.
Yes. But a couple things I want to touch on this. First, I'd love to just get your perspective on why it happened.
Oh my goodness, the $1 million question, right? It's interesting. It was definitely hot. And I think even into the night, it was quite warm. Like I was out at Notre Dame de la Gorge as well. And it was like, I had a jacket with me and like I had to put that thing away because I was sweating buckets. Yeah. And so it was definitely warm. And that can mess with your nutrition, right? And if that is messed up from the get-go, that's a big challenge. But yeah, honestly, I thought the attrition, specifically in the men's race, because I woke up and I sent some texts. When I woke up Saturday morning, I sent some texts to some people and I said, what happened overnight? Like, did I miss a weather event or something? And the response just said, you're talking about the men, right? Because the women have held it together. And I think that is an interesting conundrum in which if you thought that the conditions were really, really bad, we'd see attrition on both sides, but the main attrition, the bulk of it came from the men's field. And I don't have a good answer for that. And I would love to say, oh, they all did this wrong. We didn't have that many guys doubling back from Western states, which is normally what I blame it on. It was hot, but it wasn't, a heinous weather year. They had a normal start. We didn't have any of those storms roll through that we were worried about. So, it kind of...
Do you think it's just that the men are inherently just much more ambitious in their goal setting? Like...
It's win or bust.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, I'm here to win or be on the podium. Otherwise, it's a waste of time.
Yeah, I don't know.
Because like sometimes we see it where the attrition doesn't happen. But this year it felt as if, this last night we used the example of Cody Lind, right? Like very well executed, 68th at Col de Vosa, 30th at Courmayeur, 7th at the end of the race.
Yeah, I saw him tearing up on his way into town, got to give him a big high five.
But perfect example of somebody who came here to have a solid day and potentially land in the top 10, and he did.
It's that racing for the top 10 versus racing for the win that happens at races like UTMB or Western States, for example. And it does that racing for the win mentality does put you in a perilous position, particularly if you don't have any sort of like other goal, right? There were people that finished because it was a hard rock qualifier. Mm-hmm. There were several people that finished because it was a hard rock qualifier.
We'll talk about them in a second.
But I think, and marched it out. And I think there's a difference between like, are you trying to rebound for another race? Did you hurt yourself? Did you take a fall? We saw people on both sides of the field take falls that ultimately led to them dropping out. This year, it happens every year in the dark. We had some bad stomachs. We had some people who just didn't feel good. And we probably had a little bit of sickness as well, but it wasn't one big thing. Like 2019, like everyone had some like weird norovirus bug and we were like, it decimated the field. I was looking through those DNFs recently just to kind of like remember what happened that year. And I was like, oh yeah, no, a lot of us were sick and dropped out. And this year it feels like a smattering of things. It wasn't like, oh, it's all this, oh, it's all that. And so I don't know if it's one of those like, do you get timed out or elect to drop out? And I think that the men in particular in this instance too, just like, things weren't going right. And instead of sticking it out, decided to pull the plug.
Yeah, well, everybody's got their own reasons, as we said last night, and no judgment to any of them. But I do want to give a shout out to some people who marched it out, people who are friends of ours. Drew Holman, our boy, finished in a little over 24 hours, I think under 25 hours.
It was still in the daylight. I saw him come in.
Still in the daylight. Jeff McGavrio was not far behind him. And then Abby Hall and Addie Bracey were in the 30-hour, 31-hour time frame. So a big shout out to those four. I know a lot of them were punching tickets for a potential Hard Rock lottery. But, it's especially on a day when attrition is crazy, when your goals go out the window, it is awesome to see athletes of their level, commit to sticking it out and finishing.
You have to have a reason to stick it out. And I think on the pro side, because it is incentivized for us to be able to bounce back quickly to get to a different start line. You see people drop out maybe more regularly. I got to actually go out on course and cheer Abby on while she was marching it out there. And, for her, it wasn't a Hard Rock qualifier. It was the fact that this time last year, she wasn't walking. She was on crutches still. Yeah. And so when I saw her out there marching it out, I said, hey, you got to remember that this time last year, you weren't walking. Like I helped you crutch to your first PT appointment in Austria.
Yeah.
You know, this time last year.
She's awesome, man.
So
I'm really proud of
closing
her.
that loop for that same reason of just being like, I need to get this thing done because I need to show myself that I can.
Yeah.
And so that, you know, if I come back next year, if I come back 2 years from now, like I've got this experience under my belt.
Okay, so final thing on this attrition topic is I think it makes the fall racing particularly entertaining. So races like Diagonal des Fous, Templier, Ultra Trail Cape Town, Ultra Pyrenees, maybe some of these UTMB races like Nice.
Kodiak. I think those races where it's like, ooh, we got to qualify for next year. We're going to see people jump back into for sure. And I just was laughing when we were sitting down because I was like, man, I know Stu from Ultra Trail Cape Town is probably like already in the
inbox is
he's already
full.
he's already in the DMs, you know, he's already sliding in saying, hey, I know that didn't go your way. Got this race in November. You want to come out to it? And they support their pros really well. So I do think that we will see other races benefit from what happened here.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Well, let's move off of it. I've got one fun thing to touch on before I'm going to revisit some of our top 10 storylines of the week. Tony, actually, never mind, Tony. We'll get to that in a second. The thing I wanted to get to, I put together a fun little medal count, okay? The Olympics just happened in Paris. We're here in Chamonix, so I figured I'd have a little...
Paralympics are currently happening.
Okay, great. Shout out to the Paralympians. So this is the medal count for the World Finals here at UTMB, OCC, CCC, and UTMB. If we compile the countries represented on the podiums of those three events, here's what we have, okay?
Okay.
Do you want to guess who won in medal count?
Oh,
The stars and bars represented, the U.S. of A, came through with 4 podiums.
Okay.
Second place, you want to guess? France.
I was going to say France or China is going to be the next one.
I've
Yeah.
got a good stat on China I'll get to in a second. Outside of the U.S. and France, nobody had more than one podium finisher, which means we had 13 countries represented in those 18 medal spots.
Super international.
Which is awesome. So let me just read through those. So again, it was USA and France, and then Italy, Spain, China, Switzerland, Slovakia, South Africa, Poland, Germany, Ecuador, New Zealand, and Canada.
Dang.
Pretty cool.
Yeah. It's super cool because when I looked at the men's like start list for UTMB, for example, I was like, oh, there's going to be a lot of French people, I think.
Yeah. I mean, there were 6 Frenchmen in the top 10 in UTMB. Yeah. So that was
That happens
as it
like
has
that
been.
happens like every year.
Yeah, I remember one year we were recording our post-race show, and I think it was 2021 when Francois won, and the top 5 men were all French.
Like, great, okay.
This year, another 6 out of 10. So the Frenchmen continue to have
Same
a
like
mortgage on the
behind
UTMB.
Jim and Zach last year too. It was like
right.
France, France, France.
Cool. So let's move off of that, revisit some storylines. I wanted to start with Ruth Croft. So Tony, if you can pull up the graphic that we've got for Ruth in all the enthusiasm about Katie Schei that is well and truly deserved. Ruth Croft also had a fantastic run.
Yeah.
22:48 for her, and she ran an incredibly tactical, strategic race running through the field.
Debut UTMB.
Right. Debut UTMB running all the way up into second place. The reason I wanted to share this graphic, which is from Steven Sierra, you got to follow him on Twitter. You can follow him at that name. Thanks to Steven. I think his website is trailflow.io. This is, I think, a cool representation of how people's placements and times improved or declined throughout the course of the 109-mile loop. And you see Ruth Croft's line, which is obviously the second one on the far right-hand side, how it is almost, in a U shape.
Yeah, yeah. So everyone else, like Katie's line is straight right across the top, and then everyone else's line like slowly falls away from Katie as Katie pulls away from the field. Yep. Ruth is one of, I think technically Sabrina Stanley's line also. She like really was able to kick it in from Valersine to the finish basically, but Ruth was, the one that really has like a J leg to it where she comes back up, she moves up through the field all the way to second position as Marianne and Lin Chen and a number of other women, Blondine, kind of all fell back more dramatically in the final third of the race.
It's so cool. And so Ruth now is something we talked about earlier in the week, has wins at OCC and CCC and now a podium at UTMB. So now she's got the triple podium at all the world finals, which is awesome. The only other people to do that are Xavier Thevenard, Katie Scheid, and Blandine LaHirondelle. So Ruth Croft, among, those 4 people now that have podiums across the World Finals, it's an elite group of individuals, and she's very much deserving.
Yeah. Did you tell Tony that she's got to run UTMB next year to go for that Triple Crown?
Yes, I did. Well, no, I asked her to run Western States because she got a golden ticket.
Fair enough.
I mean, she will eventually be in that conversation, I would guess. But as we talked about before we started, she's got a long runway to get around to all these great 100-mile races and a lot to accomplish in the meantime.
Yeah, and kind of in that same doubling up on wins stat, we had both Yao Miao and then Tony McCann become the 5th and 6th runners ever to get the OCC CCC double.
Yep. Ruth, this is from our boy Liam, Aid Station Fireball. This is a Fireball corner. Ruth ran the fastest split ever from Flagere to the finish after she passed Marianne Hogan, something like 39 minutes. Oof. So thanks to Liam for that stat. And man, she's just absolutely flying. The thing that I think is interesting, seeing how Katie raced, seeing how Ruth raced, when Ruth does her postmortem to analyze and evaluate her own performance, I hope she's very happy, but I wonder if she thinks, should I have pushed a little bit harder earlier?
Yeah, and I wonder, the start is chaotic, right? And because we are on the same start line as all the men, you can definitely, and we don't benefit from drafting like cycling does, but you can definitely get lost a bit in the field. And if Katie can tuck away, the elastics broke before it ever got set up, Yep. And so I wonder if, you set the women off an hour early, even 15 minutes early even, and they were allowed to kind of position themselves appropriately before the race kind of really opens up. Would you see more tactics? Would you see more bunched racing? Would you see these packs form?
That is fascinating.
Versus a time trial. It's kind of a time trial for the women right now because we do get lost inherently in the men's race. And it's I saw Ruth at Notre Dame de la Gorge, and I think that she looked like she was just kind of in her zone, but she was back a bit from that.
I was
top
nervous.
3 pack.
I was like, where the hell is Ruth?
And I don't think, I know we all thought we had missed her or something, but I do think that I don't know that she had the best start. I don't know that she felt amazing. I don't know that it was a tactic of I'm going to go out slow and pick it up. I think it was that's what the race was giving her at that moment. And when the sun came up, she progressively felt better. And when it got hot and people started to feel warm, she didn't, because she loves that stuff. And then apparently she can run downhill really fast at the end.
Yeah. Well, shout out to Ruth Croft. I hope she takes another swing at it in the future.
I bet we see her back next year.
Yeah, but also just what an incredible debut. 22:48. I think that's the 4th fastest time of all time.
Of course, it's going to be Ruth Croft.
Yeah. So here's a Ryan bomb here for the show. This is something that Ryan brought up. So if we think about the 4 classic events at UTMB, at this point, people sometimes forget about TDS, but it does exist. Ludo Pomeray now has 6 top 5s across those 4 events. 4 top 5s at UTMB, a podium at CCC, and a win at TDS. The only other person who exceeds Ludo's prowess in the history of UTMB is Xavier Thevenard, who has 8 top 5s across the 4 classics here: OCC, CCC, TDS, and UTMB.
The ageless wonder.
Ageless wonder.
And interestingly too, he's got a, if we talk about the big 4, probably 100-milers, it's Western States, Hard Rock, Grand Raid, and UTMB. And he's got 3 of those 4.
3 of the 4.
So that's
maybe at 50 years old, he comes and wins Western States next year. And our boy Tony with the Sony got some of the photos of the weekend of Ludo in the finishing shoot.
Oh, when he got carried in, that was next level.
And the HOKA team carrying him on his victory
I love
lap.
the Ludo chanting too is very next level.
He's just needs a lifetime achievement award at this point, but he's still at the top of the game. You can't give those things away until your performance starts decreasing. So Ludovic Pomeray, just, also we'll get to this later, but having an incredible season. So I want to touch on a few more of the things that we talked about in our top 10 storylines. The next thing I want to touch is the Debutants. So we had, 6 notable debutantes in our pre-race material. Tony McCann wins CCC on debut. Thibaut Baroni in 12th at UTMB in debut. Dmitry Matveev, his second DNF, Remy Bonnet, his second DNF, Helena Faulkner, DNFs at UTMB, Manuel Marias, DNFs at CCC. So kind of a tale of two stories here.
Tony really coming out the heavy favorite
having
there.
Solid days, and
Tony's day wasn't just solid. Tony's day was an epic win. Like stepping up in distance, figuring out that 100K, definitely feeling the hurt for the first time at that distance and just having to trust that her body was going to keep doing what her body needed to do. Actually, I don't know if she brought this up in her interview, but did you guys know that her pole was jammed and that's why she couldn't use poles for the first half of the race?
I was going to ask her that.
Yeah, so I got a message on our team chat that someone needed to bring poles for her to Champex-Lac because one of her poles wouldn't extend. And so, and she'll tell you, I've got little bird arms. Like I got to be kind of like, tactical when I use poles anyway, cause I'm like not strong enough to use them for the whole thing. But yeah, she, those early climbs in CCC, I feel like are somewhere you kind of want poles for those steep initial climbs. And
also Hayden, no poles.
Yeah. And CCC is a race where you can definitely go no poles on. There are people that kind of, you and I wouldn't, we're pole people, but CCC is that race where I feel like it kind of splits the difference there as far as like the people who you can win this race without poles.
Yeah, I think Peter Frano didn't have poles either. I may be wrong about that, but
yeah, Peter Frano's an interesting character too. I'm really curious to see what he does next.
Yeah, we talked about him with Hayden earlier today, but anyway, again, sort of a mixed bag there with the debutants. A huge victory for Tony, as you said, a solid run from Thibaut, and then 4 high-profile DNFs from Dimitri, Remy, Helen Mino, and Manuel Marias. Moving on, another storyline coming in, of course, there were 4 straight American women's victories at UTMB. Now 5 straight American women victories at UTMB. Katie Scheid stamps her name in the history books again. So Courtney and Katie have now combined to win 5 in a row.
That's nasty.
Yep.
Yeah, we thought that maybe that would change this year, but doesn't, obviously didn't come to fruition. But I do think we've got some interesting folks coming up the pipeline as far as like Ruth Croft taking another stab on it, Chen Lin having a redemption run post Western States and running super, super solid. Like I do think we're going to see a Chinese UTMB champion in the next couple of years.
Yeah. What about Emily Hoggood? You think she's got it in her?
I mean, she's so solid. It was another one of those days where it like didn't quite work out, still ran obviously supremely well. That was my stone
cold lock. Emily Hoggood will absolutely be in the top 10.
100%, right? It's like, even though she had a hard day, she was right there in the mix. Once again, I think she struggled really a lot in the final quarter. There was some GI upset, some vomiting was happening. I think it was actually the first time she's ever puked in a 100-mile race.
Wow.
So got that one checked off. Checked that one off the box finally. But yeah, so she definitely did not have the smoothest day as opposed to like her CCC last year that just looked pretty flawless. Yep. This was definitely a harder day out for her.
She's so awesome. And that's actually a perfect segue to the next thing I wanted to talk about was the doublers. Of course, we discussed this as part of our top 10 storylines also. And again, it's a bit of a mixed bag. So let's talk about what happened on the women's side. Of course, we're talking about the doubles between Western States and UTMB here. Katie Scheid wins both.
Knocks it out of the park.
Yeah, becomes, I think, the 3rd woman to do that ever, with Nikki Kimball doing it in like 2007, Courtney Dauwalter doing it in 2023, and now Katie Scheid doing it in 2024. And that's a stat compliments of Aid Station Fireball again. So we don't need to say much more about that, but Katie Scheid, absolutely incredible, and pulls off the double victory, not just a solid double. Fujia Zhang, DNF last night. Esther, who was 3rd at Western States, a solid 13th. I'm sure an imperfect day, but she got it done for a 13th place finish, which is solid. Emily Hoggood, double 6th between Western States and UTMB. And then the other person I wanted to give a shout out to, Heather Jackson.
That was a great run for her. I was like, initially I was like, hey, where'd you finish? She was like 5th. And I was like, no way.
Yeah.
Cause I was sure leaving Valorsine that like things were maybe going to fall apart for her just because it is like that for her is like some very technical terrain. It is rocky. You are so tired in that section. And there were some women behind her that I was like, oh man, like this might be where those gaps come down and she gets past, and didn't happen. Amazing run.
So awesome. So I said this yesterday, but it's worth repeating. Heather has multiple podium performances at Ironman Kona, the World Championship. Earlier this year, she was in a sprint finished, I think, 8th at Unbound Gravel 200, sort of the UTMB of gravel racing.
A bunch sprint. So they basically had 8 women racing for first, and came out in the back of the bunch sprint. But she's mega talented on the bike.
But you know, within seconds of winning,
tenths of seconds, yeah,
tenths of seconds of winning the UTMB of the gravel world. She was 7th at Western States this year, so a top 10 at Western States, and now a top 5 at CCC. Between an Ironman Kona's, Ironman 70.3 World Championships, Unbound Gravel, near victories, Western States top 10, CCC top 5s. I'm trying to think of anybody else in endurance sports history who has like a similar prowess across disciplines.
Not in recent history anyway. There are people who are dual summer winter Olympians type of thing. So obviously that's a pretty high level, who are like Olympians in track cycling and speed skating, for example. Like those people do exist and they are freak talents, but in our little endurance world, we haven't seen something quite like Heather in a while.
Yeah. Okay. So back to the doubler storyline on the men's side. Again, sort of a mixed bag. Jim Walmsley wins Western States, then DNF here. Rod Farvard, second Western States, 15th at CCC. He's actually staying next door to us here. And, you know, he's sort of like unsatisfied, but doesn't seem like he's devastated by it.
Got it done.
Yeah. Hayden, third place in 14:24 at Western States and a first place at CCC. Like up there with Katie with
like 3 or 4 minutes faster than he ran CCC last time in 2017 when he won.
Dan Jones, double 4th, like Emily was double 6th. Wait, Emily was...
Oh, don't do
I might be wrong about that, but Dan Jones was double 4th. Emily might have been 4th this year also, Western States, behind Esther.
Yes. No, yes.
My brain is a puddle
We
right
are
now.
doing great.
Yeah.
I'm staring off into space at this point. My brain is not functional.
Caleb Olson was 4th at Western States, 12th at CCC. John Ray was 9th at Western States, DNF at CCC. Shen was, what was he? 8th at?
8th. I think it was
Western
8th or 9th, and then DNF here, yeah.
And then we got to give a shout out to Ludo winning Hard Rock and 5th at UTMB.
Yeah, so we had some double success. Less double success, I feel like, on the women's Western States to UTMB double this time. Less success. I mean, Esther, we used to not see people get it done. Like it was like Western States and then drop out at UTMB. So I don't want to be like, oh, Esther, you failed because you were 13th at UTMB. Like that's really probably a very unfair characterization of her pulling, like doing that double. And now our expectation is you got to be top 10 at both.
Yeah.
Which has shifted a lot in the last 3 years. But it seems like the men's Western States to CCC double went really, really well this year. And
With the exception of John Ray, really.
Yeah, but I do think that we'll see more. I do think the Western States to CCC double is a very logical pipeline that I think we'll see more of.
I agree. And that's one of the things that I said to Tony McCann and that Hayden and I were talking about is like,
she can do Western States?
Fear of stepping up to Western States. It's like, it's really only 4 more hours, 12 hours at CCC. Now the women run 16 at Western States. It's not as if she would be stepping up to UTMB, which would be 22 on a, best case scenario.
Yeah.
So it's not like she would be doing 10 hours more. It'd be more like 4 or 5 hours more.
Yeah, totally. Just that little jump.
Yeah. So anyway, always an interesting storyline, but also a ton of recent precedent about the practicality of the Hard Rock UTMB double. I mean, think about it. In 2021, Francois won both. Mm-hmm. In 2022, Killian won both. Mm-hmm. In 2023, Courtney won both. And now in 2024, Ludo goes first, 5th.
Yeah, I mean, I do think that they are characteristically similar from a training perspective. And I feel like as long as you recover well after it's not like you're doing a training block in between the two, right?
I think
it's like,
Hard Rock, this is my takeaway. Hard Rock is easier to recover from than Western States.
Oh, 100%. 100%. But a big double in France, for example, is the UTMB to Grand Raid double. Yeah. And I feel like that is also like more commonly done successfully And so like there's a trend there, right? It's like big mountainous thing versus like the 14 to 16 and a half hour drag race in which like you've shredded yourself in the heat too. And the heat I think is a real kind of recovery dark hole.
Yeah. All right. Doublers, always a fun storyline to talk about before and after the races. The other thing I just looked up, you mentioned it earlier in our show, China is really showing up here at the World Finals in a big way. 7 top 10s from China, including 1 win, Mao Yao in OCC. The only race without a top 10 athlete that was Chinese was men's UTMB. So in other words, they had in 5 of the 6 world final races between men and women, there was only 1 event that didn't have a Chinese athlete in the top 10.
Yeah, and the Frenchmen really took up those positions here this year. But I do think that they are a force to be reckoned with. It does sound like one of the 3 golden tickets was a very happy yes from the Chinese athlete who took that ticket. Craig was very pleased with it as well. So I do think that...
Same with Adam Peterman.
Adam Peterman was like, thank goodness. So I do think that we're going to see more and more Chinese success here because I don't think we're prepared for what's coming out of China. Yeah. I think they are so good and they're athletes that we've never heard of. And I think that when they figure out making it over here, being in this different environment, making it to the US, being in that different environment, it's like how we come over to Europe and like really good Americans will struggle at races. The China to Western Europe or to the US isn't like an easier transition. So I think that once these athletes have the support, have that like maybe that contact point with that Western coach or whatever it is, we're going to see Chinese athletes on the top of the podiums here.
Yeah. Okay. Another fun thing that Travis Longcar brought to my attention, tying the 2023 UTMB stories with 2024. The 2023 women's podium at OCC was Tony McCann, Katie Scheid, Mao Yao. They all swept the world finals.
That's insane.
Isn't that cool?
That didn't dawn on me at all.
Yeah, so for our viewers and listeners, again, 2023 OCC women's podium, Tony McCann won, Katie Scheid was second, Mao Yao was third. Mao Yao won OCC this year, Tony McCann won CCC this year, Katie Scheid won UTMB this year.
Nasty.
What that says to me is that OCC is a great development pipeline to continue to dominate at the highest level on the world stage. And I thought OCC was one of the most exciting races of the week.
I think that they, year over year, put together some of the most competitive races. The women's spread, I think, was 19 minutes first to 10th. Men's spread was like 20 or 21 minutes first to 10th. It's tight racing. Yeah. You know, it's 30 seconds. It's a minute between placing. It's all out from start to finish, I think. And what's cool, though, and I mentioned this earlier in the week, is that, you know, you saw someone like Katie Scheid last year go from Western States to OCC, and it's like, to be on the podium at any of these races, you've got to probably have the fitness and capabilities to be on the podium of any of these races. Yeah. It's not so much that, like, you know, you wouldn't be successful at the 100K or 100-mile distance or vice versa. I think that you've got to show up here ready to throw down, independent of the 6-hour to 22-hour race.
One of the things that Katie Scheid posted before the race that I thought was interesting was that she spent the last 2 years focused on Western States and therefore has built a ton of leg speed. And typically at UTMB, she's been less confident in her abilities on the faster sections of the course. And as we talked about with CCC, it is a great race for people who are good in the mountains but also have leg speed. I think UTMB is kind of turning into that as well. Vincent Bouillard has a history as a track and field athlete, running cross-country races as well. So the development of speed, I think we're going to continue to see more top-end athletes being on the track or doing dedicated things like Tom Evans does of doing a cross country and a track season.
Yeah, like UTMB isn't just a hiking race anymore. And there is hiking in it for sure, power hiking, but there's a lot of fast running to be done in UTMB. You can't plod through any of it.
Yeah. Okay, a couple more things before we wrap up here. I've got our way too early predictions for 2025.
You've got to kick this one off first.
Okay, I'm kicking this off. All right, my way too early predictions for 2025. Ruth Croft and Jim Walmsley win UTMB in 2025. How correct am I?
I mean, I think I'd buy that. I think I'd put money down on that. I think that is a very, I don't know, that's not the hottest of hot takes. Let's put it that way. I think that is like a predictable outcome for next year.
Certainly not going out on a limb and finding the equivalent of Vincent Bouillard to win next year. That would be much harder. But I think Ruth Croft will get a victory here. 22:48 on debut. She can do better.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. And I think that
and doing better is
winning. Yeah. And I think she can execute it on it for sure. I think 2025, I think that this year kind of felt like a year in flux a little bit. I think this is, once again, this is not a hot take, obviously. I think that we're going to see kind of a continued pull of UTMB. I know we've had our ups and downs collectively as a community. But I do think that it's being set up in such a way that I think we're going to see the best of the best gather here. And I think that we're working our way from obligation to be here to really wanting to be here, to be on that big stage. Cause it's not the de facto world championships yet, but I do think that year over year from OCC to UTMB, you're seeing that. I guess 2025 is interesting though, because you've got the World Mountain Running and Trail Championships like 3 or 4 weeks later. That is
the dumbest thing in the world, in my opinion.
It is. I wasn't saying it was smart, but I do think that it's not going to be the easiest double to pull off. And so particularly if you're going from UTMB down to like the 50 mile at Worlds, the OCC to that double makes sense. So I do wonder if we lose anyone, like do we lose French athletes? Because the French athletes love world championships. The Spanish athletes love world championships. The Italian athletes love world championships. Is Francesco going to be able to race OCC and Worlds?
Francesco's in CCC next year. I already convinced him.
Okay, Francesco, is he going to be able to race CCC and Worlds next year?
This is a good thing to chat about. Okay, so just so
Tangent time.
our audience understands, because we may be a little esoteric here, the World Championships next year are going to be held in Canfranc, Spain in September, only a few weeks after UTMB. So it would be basically impossible for the top athletes to target
Freetrail's
both.
going.
So one or both of those races are going to get diluted. I think it's a travesty, okay? It has to either be in June or like May or June or November, December. So
yeah, end of October. I think you do 8 weeks, right? So end of October. I think you could do that to November for sure.
Right.
Come on, team.
Putting the World Championship race directly in conflict with UTMB
and
World
the
Final.
Golden Trail World Series final. It's in conflict with many things, not just UTMB. And I think that is going to rip apart the fields next year.
I am writing a sternly worded email
to whomever
as soon as we log off
to World Athletics.
Okay, my other way too early prediction: ETC next year. This is part of our storylines earlier in the week. We'll be stacked and have a live stream. It's going to be a really fun race to watch next year. That's a way too early prediction. Also, another way too early prediction: Tony and Patty are doing PTL. Ryan's doing MCC. Addie's doing ETC. And your boy Debo's doing CCC next year.
Oh.
And we're still doing all of our shows, including Tony, who will somehow produce our shows while he's out on the PTL course.
I think you'll kill Patty if you do PTL with him. Like, no offense, Patty. I don't think you're listening to this, but I know that sounds like a horrible... I love Patty. I don't think I'm going to go do PTL with Patty.
I would do PTL with.
I think I'd
Which race are you doing
I think
next
I'd
year?
push him off the mountain at some point in time. He'd start singing something and I'd be like, nope, we're done. That's a great question. I don't know what I'm doing next year. Maybe I'm producing the show next year.
Yeah, okay.
Get my producer credits. I could do TDS again. I do really like that race, even though it's kind of the weird race of the week.
It's arguably the coolest course.
It is. I do really love the course. That climb out of Bourg St. Maurice that we didn't get to race in 2018 I've gotten to preview it, and it's a really cool course.
6,000 feet. Okay, couple more things. Troy Watch. After UTMB, of course, this is where athletes put up insane performances, oftentimes sort of like the best of their careers or things that really put them on the map. In some cases, also extending ridiculous streaks of consistency. So some things to just touch on here before we wind down in terms of some of the athletes who are having the best seasons of 2024. Hayden Hawks and Katie Scheid have to be the front runners right now for Trail Runner of the Year. Hayden Hawks, a win at Black Canyon, a third place running 14:24 at Western States, a tune-up victory at the Cat 50K in Austria, and now a win at CCC. Katie Scheid, of course, trifecta of sick victories at Canyons 100K, Western States, and UTMB.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's spot on. I do think that we will always kind of like need to remember that there are other series going on, obviously. So there will be like the Patricks and the Philemons, et cetera, to keep our eyes on as those
they're
races
in the
continue.
mix.
They're definitely in the mix. But this weekend definitely did kind of step up a bunch of individuals.
How about Eli Hemming?
Oh,
Troy Watch.
Eli
City.
Hemmings, Troy Watch. Some of the races he's done this year have been a little bit like maybe lower on the competitive scale, but consistency. And
I mean, not really.
And I think getting that OCC win, Black Canyon 60K, for example, was not a deep field for the men this year. Women's field, very good this year at the 60K. Men's field, not so much. But I will say, I think there was some doubt of like, Eli's on a tear. He's like winning all these races, but can he win a race like OCC? Like, can this guy actually do that? And it's very obvious that he can actually do that. And there was a moment where I think we all thought that we were going to get a double Hemming victory. Yep. I'm sad that did not happen, but yeah, Eli Hemming on the top of that podium.
Troy
very
Watch
exciting.
City.
I'm thinking, and I've got to imagine that he's thinking about CCC next year.
Yeah. Also, Ruth, Transvolcania.
Yep. Course record, Transvolcania.
Yeah. And second at UTMB. And then, of course, Ludo, course record at Hard Rock, fifth at UTMB.
Solid.
Troy Watch City after UTMB. Okay. We can wind down. Give us a sense of what you guys accomplished with here for the women's race. Any final thoughts from you about race week, your role within it? I saw your T-shirts all over the place.
Yeah, we had T-shirts everywhere. It was really, really exciting. We still have some left because they got held in customs with actually all of our studio decorations. So that was really fun. But yeah, we printed 700 shirts for this weekend, and I think we've offloaded not all of them, but like almost 600 shirts. So that is very exciting. But we saw them on everyone. We saw them on entire crews out there. We saw them on people's parents, people's grandparents, on children. It was really exciting. And I do think that when they were out on course too, we had Courtney DeWalter in one that she purchased off our website, which I think is really cute. And I was so happy to see those photos of her out at Champélac, repping the shirt, cheering people on. And those organic moments were really cool where we had people like out literally cheering on the women wearing these shirts and lighting up the world. So yeah, things have went really well. We raised a bunch of money. So even if like our exempt status doesn't come in by the end of the year, we've got a bunch of money set that we can give out for grants without like the worry
Expand on that
of donors.
For those who haven't quite heard about the fund. Yeah.
So the shirts that you saw at Western States and now UTMB week are available online, as well. But it started as a conversation within the PTRA in which we were just like upset that the coverage for women was lacking. And we wanted to like show up to Western States and be like, we're here to support the women. We're here to watch the women. We're here to cheer for the women. And that message grew legs and has meaning for different people. But what we realized is that we needed to create something much bigger with it that was more community centered and was as inclusive as possible, right? That it needed to really represent the trail running community at its heart. So we created the Women's Trail Running Fund, or the WTF. And all that money is going into a grant pool to be given out in early 2025. Grants will open in October. And we've got an amazing steering committee coming together of community leaders from all over the place that will help us both kind of steer future projects and allocate funds from this initial grant pool. And it's going to help share women's stories from the front of the pack to the back of the pack and everything in between.
Awesome. Any other closing comments about the weekend? The racing.
It was so different this year for me. I got to kind of bop around a bit. I got to be out on course for the first time. It felt like in years. I got to cheer on teammates because I wasn't locked in a studio. And while it was a very different experience for me, because I do love being in studio and doing commentary, because I think that, it helps people that are at home watching really get a sense of what's going on and to hear about these interesting storylines. I got to enjoy just like being with the circus of humans that were here this week and getting to meet a lot of really cool people. So I had a blast. It turns out it was as exhausting as it always is. I barely ran. I sort of slept. I don't think I'm sick yet, but it's one of those things where it's like, I'm coming out of this week drained, but also so fulfilled.
I put in 6.8 miles today.
I put in 6.8 miles today too.
Let's go. Training starts tomorrow. Debo, Corinne, Malcolm. I'm on my way to CCC 2025. Don't look now.
You got your qualifiers already lined up. You're good.
Well, Corinne, always fun to chat about this stuff with you. It was an incredible week, an incredible weekend, and we do appreciate all the commentary and perspective and insight that you bring to the show when you do come and join us. A big thank you to the team behind the scenes, our boy, Mr. Ryan Thrower, our boy, Tony with the Sony. These dudes hustled their asses off all week, and we were better for it. So big thank you to these guys. Also, Hillary Yang was on our team this week. She was great. So thank you to Hillary for all her hard work. Big thank you to HOKA for supporting our coverage all week. If you haven't yet, you got to go buy that Tecton X3. Your boy, Vincent Bouillard, Vinny B, is the man behind the Tecton 3. He won it again. The shoe won Western States. You got to go buy a pair. I think that's it. A big thanks to our audience. Hope you guys enjoyed our coverage of the 2024 UTMB. It was a big lift from all of us, but we love the sport, we love the race, and we love being able to do this. Trail running will save the world. For Tony, Ryan, Corinne, I'm Debo. We'll see you guys next year. Peace out.